Hey there, guitar geeks. Guitar Guts back to talk about the infamous bridge rattle on Les Paul guitars. Les Paul guitars, like this guitar, are known to often have a bit of a rattle, a buzz to the bridge itself. Sometimes people think it's high frets or some other problem on up the neck, but it boils down to one small little retaining wire, just a little bit thinner than a paper clip, that runs across the top of these set screws, the adjustment screws, on the front of the Les Paul bridge. You can't see it real well on the one on the guitar because it's the same color as the metal, but I think I'll be able to show it to you a little better here on this extra bridge that I took off one of my other Les Paul guitars. This is a common bridge on Les Pauls and SGs, and it has metal saddles that are on an adjustment screw that you can use to adjust the intonation on the guitar. And those little saddles with their screws will easily come up out of the tailpiece if you just pull them a little bit. They pop right up out of there. They're not in there permanently. And that, I think, is why the retaining wire was there to begin with. This is the retaining wire. And on a normal Les Paul bridge, it runs from one side where it's got a small hole that it fits into right there, and it runs up over the top of the adjustment screws and comes back down into a small hole in the other side, and it just bends across the top of the screws like that. It'll be behind them when you get it in there correctly. It's a little hard to get in there, and it runs up across the top of the adjustment screws and holds some tension down on those so that when you turn your bridge upside down, when you're taking your guitar apart to put strings on or cleaning it, you turn it upside down like that and the adjustment saddles won't fall out of your bridge. That was the original intent of the retaining wire. I don't really think you need it while you're playing, because if you think about it, the strings are running up over the top of those saddles while you play and pressing down on the screws that could come out of there, so they're not going anywhere while you play. It's just when you take your guitar apart that you might need that retaining screw so you don't lose small parts. But the fact that it's there can cause some string rattle. It's not a perfect fit across the top of those screws. They're fairly flat but have a little bit of a radius to them, and so that puts a little bit of a bend in the wire. And sometimes that wire can get away from the adjustment screws just far enough that when the vibration of the string vibrates the bridge, it'll cause a little bit of rattle between that retaining wire and the adjustment screws. Now, I've seen many people talk about different cures for this, and I've tried a couple myself. You can take a small screwdriver, and from the top of the bridge where the retaining wire sits, if you see that it's setting up above one of the saddles, you can simply take the head of a flat screwdriver and press down on that wire a little bit, putting a kink in it, and that could hold it against the adjustment screw. You might have to do it more than one place across the span of that wire in order to get it to stop buzzing. And I've tried that before. I think you can see from this retaining wire that I had on one of my old Les Pauls that I've put a couple of kinks in it trying to get it to stop rattling, and that didn't really help. It would stop the rattle in one place and just cause rattle in the place adjacent to it. So that didn't work very well for me. I've seen a couple of people say that you can strip the wire off of an old pickup lead wire or some wiring that you pulled out of an old guitar, just some an electronic device that you've got a small wire out of. You can take the insulation wire, if it's bendy enough, off of another electronics wire and feed it onto, feed the insulated plastic onto the retaining wire and stretch it across the top so that you've got insulated wire over the top of the metal on your retaining wire. It's going to look a bit weird, you know, when you get it on the guitar, depending on what color your insulation is. You could get black, I suppose, or silver. It might not look quite as bad. But I never tried that because I thought that if adding that extra width to it, they might not fit down behind those screws well enough, and you'd have this big humped up strange looking piece there that didn't seem to fit with the rest of the bridge. So for me, that wasn't the best option to try. I probably should have. It might have saved me a little bit of money. The option that I decided to try was simply replacing the bridge. I'll take you over to my main Les Paul. What I've done with this one, instead of trying to fix the retaining wires, I simply replaced the bridge with one that didn't have it. This is a replacement bridge. It drops straight in. There was no modifications made to the guitar, so if I want to put the original bridge back on, that's fine. I can do that. But this one doesn't have the retaining wire on it. I think you can see on the front of this one where the retaining wire should be. The screws simply go through the metal of the bridge itself. There's no wire needed to hold that down because the screws are in the bridge and not just sitting on top of it. And the same thing for the back. They come through the back and there's no slot where they can come out. And that solved the problem for me. It's a good bridge. It's got a little bit more intonation adjustment forward and backward as well, so that helped with that too. It is a little bit wider, and so you might have to raise your tailpiece a little bit or even top wrap your tailpiece in order to keep the strings from hitting the back of that wider bridge. But for me, that wasn't a problem. I like to have this angle a little shallower anyway to help with the stiffness of the strings. It makes them a little easier to play if you've got that angle a little less steep. And so I like it this way, and this bridge has been a really good one, and it solved the problem of the retaining wire string rattle on my Les Paul. Let us know what you think. If you got a different solution to it, or you've got some pointers that we haven't thought of, let us know in the comments. And as always, like our videos, and we'll see you later.